Bill, what is
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is the people that done had it.
Okay.
We're going to start with...
Let's give a history.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Sugar Ray Robinson.
There we go.
Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yes.
Floyd Mayweather.
Greats.
Sweet Pea.
Sweet Pea.
Pernell Whitaker. Roberto Duran.
Another great.
Damn.
Yeah.
And listen.
That's
and
a tremendous list.
Devin, the Dream Haney.
That's a great.
Not just he's the welterweight in the welterweight division.
Okay.
Now, I mean, they said it was a bad man that he took it from, Brian Norman Jr. We took him over there to Riyadh, stripped him out, knocked him down, beat him up.
Yeah, and
caused hysteria in the family.
And let me tell you something before you continue. I don't want you to stop there. I just want to be honest with you. You guys, my man Sin, because the fights previously, before he fought your son, we're going to refer to him on this episode as Debo. Before he fought Debo, I said, damn, that nigga tough. I said, I don't know. Yeah. This could be a tough one. This is what we said. And the way that he lost and got beat up, I said, this is not the fighter talking about Debo that we seen previously before this fight. Not saying he wasn't good before this. This is a nigga who won a problem. You know what I'm saying? So back to this fight that you were just referring to.
Well, we got to talk about the brick that he was hit with. If we're going to correlate it to the movie, we got to talk about that he was cheated.
Okay.
And when I said that he was cheated, I came on here and everybody thought I was crazy.
Yep.
Until they seen, right?
Yeah.
What Debo is and what he do. We've been wanting that rematch since 420.
Right.
Under fair circumstances.
And hold on, I hate to keep cutting you. I just want to make sure our audience understands. With Ryan
Garcia.
Yes, you're saying that he was cheated. And when you're saying he was cheated, what do you mean by saying he was cheated? Because I understand what you're saying, but just so people understand.
So let me clear it up.
Yes.
After the 420, I would say big take, big score, robbery. That took place between Golden Boy and Ryan Garcia, where Ryan Garcia tested positive for PEDs, Ostarine in particular. Right. He pled guilty to the New York State Athletic Commission, was stripped. He was put on suspension, and he was also charged a $1 million fine that was given to the promotional company and Golden Boy. And can you imagine, we were doing the co-promotion together, and they didn't give us a dime.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was hot about it. We set out to sue about it. And we understand that some people, you know what I mean, you just got to get it back in blood. There's just no way that it's going to be fair.
So we understand, just like I said, I already know, I want the audience to make sure they understand. Let me ask you this. How offended are you when somebody not only test positive, but coming overweight as well? Because we didn't talk about that. Not only did he test positive, he also came in overweight. Do you take that personal, because as an offensive, because this is a dangerous sport. Like, to me personally, I'm sitting there saying to myself, is you trying to kill me, nigga? You know what I'm saying? Because this isn't tennis.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? This isn't swimming. What the fuck you trying to do to me? How do you take that? I'm just telling you how I would
this
take
is the perfect platform. It is what it is, and I'm going to tell you what it ain't.
Right.
I mean, we not for the bullshit. That's not what represents those champions.
Right.
From being a little boy with Devin, we had a dream to set out that he would be considered one of the best, the Mount Rushmore of boxing.
Right.
So to answer your question, that fell on me. That's the business side.
Okay.
Him coming in 3 pounds over, but then also being on Ostarine was a blow to us from a business standpoint, because we should have never let Devin fight.
Right.
But what you got a chance to see and what people don't tend to talk about, they say, yeah, he got beat up. No, he got up and he got knocked down and he got back up.
Right.
Not once, not twice, 3 times.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that that's talked about enough. If it's not for our culture and other cultures, it's considered that he's a warrior. Mm-hmm. What happened to that?
Right.
They conveniently leave out that part of it.
Right.
You know, so I mean, I'm extremely proud of him. And if it was a rebound that could have happened from all that, we rebound, baby.
There you go.
Yeah, like the Knicks.
There you go. Don't even get this nigga hype right here. This nigga super duper Knicks
like fan. The Knicks, man.
There you go. Do you think bringing that up, that Floyd Mayweather had anything to do with helping Ryan Garcia with that fight? Because that was rumors circulating as well.
I mean, he's did everything publicly to help us, but privately to hurt us. You know what I mean? But that's allowed for us to be who we are. You know what I mean? Standing up 10 toes down and owning our shit. You know what I mean? Nobody owns our story. We did it. We did it independently. You know, like you like a Harlem nigga would do. You know what I'm saying?
Oakland and Harlem, same shit.
Oh, ain't no doubt. Ain't no doubt. So not only do we have undisputed, being the youngest undisputed at that time, also 3 division, you know, we own the story as well. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I wouldn't have it, I wouldn't have wanted it to been Floyd that helped us. I like just the way the story turned out.
Right. I didn't want to cut this story off. Back to this when we get talking about Norman. So you was about to tell us what you had to do after Ryan to get this belt.
Well, I mean, we were, listen, I think, and I don't know what your sentiments was about it, but Brian Norman had just put a guy in the hospital.
Yeah, he looked good. I mean? He looked good.
Yeah, he just put a guy in the hospital. The guy, he went into a coma, you know what I mean, for like 2 weeks. He came out the coma. The first thing he said was, Brian Norman can punch like a motherfucker.
Right.
The second thing he said was, he better not fuck with Devin Haney. And he didn't listen.
Okay.
And on that night, yeah. Bruited, battered, beat up. You dig what I'm saying? And the worst thing that can happen to a family is to go astray after Devin put that motherfucking ass whooping on them. And I know they don't like to talk about it, but they like to talk about all the shit Brian Norman Sr. was talking. And when he got through with that, I don't know if you seen it. He told him, he said, trust me, son, go in there. It's nothing over there. And he came back. And he came back fucked up.
You just said a second ago you was trying to get this rematch with Ryan. Why hasn't that happened? And what's the process of trying to get a rematch with Ryan?
Oh, absolutely. Well, from a business perspective, the first time is shame on me. You know what I mean, for falling for it. And then the second time is shame on them for trying it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It has to be right. The business has to be right in terms of the amount of time that we go before the fight with testing. Right. You know what I mean? I just want that it's fair, that he's not on anything, and we do it. No, it's simple and plain.
You got people who will say this right now. We know that he's on the PEDs and overweight, etc., but he just looked better skill-wise. Some people will say Devin kept getting hit with the left hook. What do you have to say to that, as far as outside the PEDs, outside of coming in overweight? What do you think when people say that his skill wasn't up to par with Ryan? What's your answer to that?
Well, it's boxing. You can get hit. You know what I mean?
Right.
But with the performance-enhancing drug and the 3 pounds, we were expecting a different Ryan Garcia.
Right.
So we were caught off guard that he was not only in a vicious state of mind, he had also rehydrated better than us. Right. They had beat us on all front.
Right.
But what do you say about Floyd, who had the picture with the 3 fingers up?
That's why I asked you that. That's why I asked you, what do you feel did I seen that? That's the reason I asked you that.
Yes.
You gave a kind of subtle answer.
No.
You know,
that was one of the times that behind the scenes he played against us.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So publicly he's playing with us, but behind the scenes he's playing against us. And you know what I mean? He can choose the side, you know.
What Bill Haney broke down during that exchange goes far beyond a father simply standing up for his son. It is a revealing look at how boxing's business machine operates behind the scenes and why the official record rarely captures the complete reality of what unfolded inside the ring. To really understand why this discussion matters, you have to pull apart 3 separate issues that became tangled together as the conversation unfolded. The legacy Devin Haney is trying to build, the substance controversy surrounding the Ryan Garcia fight, and the calculated business strategy happening behind closed doors among promoters, commissions, and competing camps. Start with the championship belt itself. Bill Haney's opening list was anything but nostalgia. Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, Roberto Duran. These aren't simply legendary names. They represent a particular generation of elite technicians who dominated at welterweight through movement, intelligence, timing, and defense, instead of relying purely on devastating power. By putting those names forward before mentioning his own son, Bill Haney is making a very intentional point about where he believes Devin belongs historically. He is essentially telling the audience, don't define Devin Haney by what happened with Ryan Garcia. Measure him against the greatest welterweights who built their reputations across years of elite performances, not one controversial night. That distinction becomes important because the timeline he gives afterward is doing much more than filling in details. He points out that Devin Haney defeated Brian Norman Jr. in Saudi Arabia, describing the performance in brutally simple terms: stripped him, knocked him down, beat him up. This is the evidence Bill Haney wants viewers to keep in mind. If the Ryan Garcia defeat is the moment everyone remembers, then the Brian Norman Jr. victory is the performance he believes deserves equal attention. And when he brings up Brian Norman Jr. again later in the discussion, he gives that argument another layer of significance. He reminds everyone that Norman had just fought an opponent who eventually wound up hospitalized and remained in a coma for 2 weeks. That detail is not being tossed into the conversation as meaningless background. It is being used to establish that Devin Haney defeated a genuinely dangerous and proven fighter, not some easy tune-up designed to pad a record. The bigger point underneath everything is an attempt to reshape the public narrative. Bill Haney clearly believes the popular version of his son's career ignores the victories that came after the loss, and he is using this platform to drag those performances right back into the spotlight. Now we get to the controversy itself, because this is where the discussion moves from questions about legacy into territory that is far more serious. Bill Haney refers to the earlier Ryan Garcia fight, which he calls 420, as something that was essentially taken away from them, and he gives a very specific reason for feeling that way. Following the fight, Ryan Garcia tested positive for a prohibited substance, specifically a performance-enhancing compound. He pleaded guilty to the violation before the New York State Athletic Commission, received a suspension, and the promotional company involved, Golden Boy, was handed a financial penalty, reportedly around $1 million. This is the point where it is worth taking a closer look because it helps explain why Bill Haney's anger did not simply disappear after the headlines faded. That $1 million penalty was not paid to Devin Haney. It went to the promotional company. So essentially, the fighter who says he was placed at an unfair disadvantage inside the ring received no direct compensation from that penalty. The commission punished the violation from a regulatory standpoint, but from the Haney camp's viewpoint, that punishment did not repair the damage done to Devin Haney's body, his professional record, or the direction of his career. That difference between a regulatory fine collected from a company and actual restitution for the athlete who suffered the consequences is at the heart of Bill Haney's frustration. It also highlights a much larger weakness that repeatedly appears in the way combat sports are regulated. Athletic commissions are primarily designed to punish violations after they happen, rather than preventing the damage those violations can create while a fight is actually taking place. A fighter can fail a drug test, acknowledge the violation, accept a suspension, and yet the institutional response can still amount to money moving through corporate channels instead of providing a meaningful way to restore what the opposing fighter actually lost, which was the right to compete under fair and agreed-upon conditions. Bill Haney's anger, when you really break it down, is aimed at that entire structure. The official result still remains a loss on Devin Haney's record. There is no automatic asterisk attached to it in the record books, and a commission penalty cannot erase the punches that were already thrown, while one fighter may have possessed an unfair chemical or physical advantage. So when Bill Haney talks about potentially pursuing legal action, he is essentially talking about finding another path to accountability, because the existing regulatory system was never built to provide the kind of remedy he believes Devin deserves. That is exactly why this issue has continued long after the original fight disappeared from the daily news cycle. At its core, this was never simply about collecting money. It was about the enormous difference between what the rules technically punish and what the fighter on the receiving end actually had taken away from him. The interviewer then takes the discussion one step further, and that is a smart move, because it separates two different violations that are often lumped together when fans discuss controversial boxing fights. Testing positive for a banned substance is one matter. Missing weight, specifically coming in 3 pounds above the contracted limit, is an entirely separate matter, and Bill Haney is asked to address each issue on its own. His response is telling. He does not dismiss either violation as some harmless technical detail buried in the paperwork. Instead, he views both through the lens of physical safety. His wording is especially intense. He essentially questions whether Ryan Garcia was putting his son's life at risk. That statement is not simply dramatic language designed to create headlines. It reflects a legitimate concern that exists in combat sports. When a fighter enters the ring overweight, he can potentially bring additional size and strength against an opponent who made the agreed-upon limit. When a fighter has used a prohibited performance-enhancing substance, there can potentially be advantages involving recovery, power production, and endurance that the rules specifically exist to eliminate. Put those two alleged violations together, and you are left with a fighter who may not be competing under the same conditions that his opponent agreed to face. Bill Haney's references to tennis and swimming are meant to highlight the unique physical danger involved in boxing compared with many other sports. In a combat sport where one clean, unanswered punch can change a career or cause something even more serious, weight and drug testing are not meaningless administrative boxes to check. They are part of the safety system. There is a technical side to this story that deserves attention because it is surprisingly easy to underestimate what a few extra pounds and a banned substance can mean once the fighters are actually inside the ring. Boxing's weight divisions are designed to keep competitors within the same physical range on fight night, not merely make sure they hit a number during the weigh-in. Today's fighters often cut substantial amounts of water weight to reach a contracted limit, then rehydrate afterward, sometimes putting 10, 15, or even 20 pounds back on before the opening bell. When a fighter misses that limit by coming in overweight, he has essentially avoided part of that draining process, potentially entering the ring heavier, stronger, and carrying more energy reserves than an opponent who sacrificed his body to make the agreed number. Now add a performance-enhancing substance to that equation, and the potential advantages become even more significant, including faster recovery between rounds, greater power production, and potentially increased aggression and durability when fatigue starts setting in. That is the physiological reality sitting underneath Bill Haney's harsh question about intent. He is not simply speaking from emotion. He is pointing toward documented physical advantages that can arise from these kinds of violations and arguing that no fine handed down afterward can magically erase whatever advantage existed during the fight itself. Then Bill Haney makes a move that many boxing fathers or promoters might hesitate to make publicly. He accepts some responsibility for what happened. He openly says that allowing Devin Haney to compete under those conditions, once the drug result and weight issue became known, ultimately falls on him from a business perspective. And this is where the story gets more complicated, because that admission actually challenges the simple narrative he is presenting. On one side, he believes his son was wronged and should receive another opportunity. On the other, he admits the bout probably should not have gone forward after those warning signs emerged. Both positions can exist at the same time, and Bill Haney appears to recognize that taking responsibility for the business decision makes his argument about fairness even stronger. It shows that he is not simply searching for excuses. He is drawing a line between what could have been stopped beforehand, the decision to let the fight happen, and what should never have occurred at all, the violations attributed to the opponent. From there, he shifts toward defending Devin Haney's actual performance, and this is where the warrior narrative becomes important. Bill Haney emphasizes that his son was dropped several times, specifically 3 times, yet managed to rise from the canvas every single time. He argues that in certain cultural settings, that kind of determination while under extreme pressure would be viewed as heroic, and he believes that element has largely disappeared from the wider discussion. This is hardly a new argument in combat sports, where a fighter's toughness can be judged separately from the final outcome. Someone can lose on the cards or even suffer a stoppage and still show extraordinary resilience and heart, earning respect from people within the sport, despite what the scoreboard says. Bill Haney's argument is essentially that Devin's ability to withstand repeated knockdowns against an opponent he describes as chemically enhanced and overweight should be viewed as evidence of his character, rather than simply another detail attached to a defeat. Then the conversation takes a fascinating detour toward Floyd Mayweather, and this is where the claims become more speculative, although certainly no less provocative. The interviewer asks whether Mayweather played any role in helping Ryan Garcia prepare for the fight, a question rooted in a rumor that had already been circulating. Bill Haney's response is anything but simple. He says Mayweather did things publicly that benefited the Haney camp, while privately doing things that worked against them. Later, when the interviewer brings up a photograph showing Mayweather holding up 3 fingers, apparently connected either to Garcia's 3-pound weight miss or some other fight-related gesture, Bill Haney says he had seen the picture and identifies it as another example of Mayweather allegedly working against them behind the scenes. His summary is straightforward. Publicly, Mayweather appeared to be playing along with the Haney camp, while privately, according to Bill, the situation was very different. That detail carries more significance than it might initially appear to, because it connects to one of the most persistent storylines surrounding modern boxing. The relationship between Floyd Mayweather and the Haney family has been complicated and at times openly adversarial, stretching back to Devin Haney's earlier development and Mayweather's influence with fighters operating around that same competitive landscape. For years, Mayweather has positioned himself as a major power broker around boxing's biggest divisions, whether through promotional ventures, unofficial mentorship of emerging fighters, or simply the enormous influence his reputation continues to have over matchmaking and public narratives. For a family like the Haneys, who developed their operation independently instead of attaching themselves to one of boxing's traditional power centers, that creates an obvious source of tension. Being independent can absolutely be a badge of honor, but it can also mean operating without the institutional protection that comes with being connected to an established power structure. Whether Mayweather actually had any direct involvement in Ryan Garcia's preparation remains a separate question, but the fact that Bill Haney is willing to make the accusation publicly and point toward a photograph as supporting evidence shows just how serious the distrust between these groups has become. And suddenly the earlier PED controversy can be viewed through a much wider lens. If Bill Haney sincerely believes outside forces were quietly working against Devin's interests, then in his mind, the drug violation stops looking like one isolated incident involving one fighter and starts fitting into what he sees as a larger pattern of behind-the-scenes moves aimed specifically at hurting Devin Haney's position. Yet despite all those accusations, Bill Haney ends this portion of the discussion with a surprisingly calm perspective. He says that even if Mayweather had genuinely offered his assistance, he would not have wanted it because he prefers the way the story ultimately unfolded, with the Haney family creating its legacy on its own terms, rather than depending on Mayweather's influence. He compares that philosophy to a Harlem-style culture of self-reliance, drawing a connection between Oakland and Harlem as places associated with people carving their own path instead of waiting for established powers to open the door. And honestly, that is a smart way to turn the conversation around. Rather than allowing the Mayweather chapter to end with bitterness, Bill Haney transforms the rivalry itself into proof that the Haney family did not need anyone else's backing to build its own name. According to Bill Haney, the family became undisputed champions and established their own identity precisely because they never relied on Mayweather's institutional support to carry them forward. What could have remained a complaint instead turned into a source of pride, with every obstacle the Haney camp faced becoming another example of how they reached the highest levels of boxing without waiting for anyone to give them approval. Now, let's get back to the belt and the Brian Norman Jr. matchup, because this fight really sits at the center of everything Bill Haney is trying to explain. Before Devin Haney ever stepped into the ring with Brian Norman Jr., Bill says a very specific reputation had already been built around Norman as a genuinely dangerous puncher. He points to Norman's previous opponent being hospitalized, and he uses that detail very intentionally to establish just how serious the threat was supposed to be. According to Bill, that fighter eventually woke up from what he described as a coma and immediately warned others about Norman's power, even going as far as saying Norman should stay away from Devin Haney. Bill presents that warning as something the Norman side ignored, and the fight that followed, in his version of events, ended up being a nightmare for the Norman camp. He specifically brings up Brian Norman Sr., the fighter's father, recalling the confidence and predictions he expressed before the bout, and then comparing that talk with what actually unfolded once the opening bell rang. This is a classic boxing storyline. Make the opponent sound dangerous, highlight the confidence and trash talk before the fight, then let the result completely rewrite the story afterward. In Bill Haney's version, Devin Haney did more than defeat Ryan Garcia Jr. He defeated a fighter who had been promoted as one of the division's most dangerous punchers, and he did it after the Norman camp had entered the matchup sounding extremely confident. That combination of a feared opponent, bold pre-fight statements, and a convincing result is exactly the kind of narrative boxing teams use when trying to restore a fighter's reputation after a major setback. And that takes us right back to the biggest unresolved issue here, the push for a Ryan Garcia rematch. When Bill Haney is asked directly why that second fight has not happened and what would actually be required to make it happen, his answer becomes much more calculated and business-focused than emotional. Once again, he accepts responsibility for the way the first fight was handled, reinforcing his willingness to own the promotional decisions surrounding the matchup. But he also makes one thing very clear: allowing the same circumstances to happen a second time would be unacceptable, and this time the blame would fall on whoever permitted that situation to continue. His requirements for another fight are actually pretty simple. Enough preparation time for proper testing procedures to function, and a fighter who makes the agreed weight without the use of prohibited substances. In other words, he isn't demanding special advantages or asking anyone to guarantee Devin wins. He is asking for the basic competitive conditions that should have been there from the beginning. Then the interviewer brings up another difficult point, and honestly, it is a fair question. Some people argue that even if you completely remove the drug controversy and the weight issue from the equation, Ryan Garcia still looked like the sharper fighter that night, especially because his left hook repeatedly caused problems for Devin Haney. Bill Haney's reaction here is noticeably calmer than some of his other responses. He simply acknowledges that this is boxing, and that taking punches is part of what comes with stepping inside the ring. He does not pretend his son was impossible to hit, or claim that the technical differences viewers noticed were somehow imaginary. Instead, he returns to the central argument he has been making throughout the conversation. Whatever boxing advantage Ryan Garcia showed that night, Bill believes it came alongside an additional physical advantage from the weight miss and another potential advantage connected to the banned substance. He describes the Haney camp as being caught off guard by a Ryan Garcia who appeared more aggressive and recovered better than expected, particularly because of the conditions surrounding the fight. And when he says Garcia's side beat us on all fronts, that is a surprisingly honest admission to make during a defensive promotional conversation. He is not saying Devin Haney simply lost under completely fair circumstances. He is admitting that even with what he considers an uneven playing field, the Garcia camp still performed better within that environment. That is a much more complicated position than blaming every part of the defeat on outside circumstances, and it helps explain why this interview feels different from the average fighter-defense conversation. It is also worth focusing on how Bill Haney responds to perhaps the hardest question of them all, whether Ryan Garcia was simply the better fighter that night. A lot of promoters and boxing fathers, when someone suggests their fighter was simply outboxed, immediately move toward denial or start arguing over judges' scorecards and controversial moments. Bill Haney doesn't take that route here. He openly acknowledges the problem Devin had with the left hook. He accepts that Devin Haney was repeatedly caught by a punch he could not consistently neutralize throughout the fight. That level of acknowledgement is unusual in interviews like this, and surprisingly, it makes the larger argument feel more believable rather than less. He isn't asking viewers to pretend that Devin Haney delivered a perfect performance that night. What he is really asking the audience to do is look at the entire picture instead of judging Devin Haney from one bad night. It was a flawed performance against an opponent who, according to Bill Haney's argument, was not competing under the same physical conditions, all within a business relationship that had already been damaged by outside factors before the fight even began. That extra layer of honesty is exactly why the Rolando Romero Jr. result carries so much importance in this discussion. It becomes perhaps the strongest answer the Haney camp has for anyone still questioning Devin's ability. If the criticism is that Ryan Garcia exposed Devin Haney's technical weakness with the left hook, the response is that Devin then went out and handled a fighter who had recently put another opponent in a coma, doing so decisively and without the same controversy surrounding the Garcia bout. There were no PED accusations hanging over that performance and no weight controversy overshadowing the result, just a clear victory against a puncher who was considered genuinely dangerous. From a storytelling perspective, that is exactly the redemption moment the Haney camp needed after the Garcia defeat, and Bill Haney builds much of this entire argument around moving viewers from one result to the next, admitting where things went wrong, explaining the specific factors he believes made the Garcia fight unfair, and then pointing toward Devin's response as evidence that his son remains an elite fighter. When you connect all those pieces, the picture that emerges is much more complicated than a simple hero versus villain storyline. It becomes a deeper look at how championship-level boxing actually functions, with athletic commissions, promoters, opposing camps, family loyalty, and business interests all pulling in different directions at the same time. Devin Haney's belt, which Bill referenced near the beginning of the conversation, sits right in the middle of that entire situation. It represents a legitimate achievement against a dangerous opponent in Rolando Romero Jr., coming after a documented and punished controversy involving Ryan Garcia, while also existing alongside allegations of behind-the-scenes interference connected to one of boxing's most influential and divisive figures, Floyd Mayweather. Bill Haney's purpose here was never simply to reopen the argument over one defeat. His goal was to place that defeat inside a much bigger story, one where his son gets off the canvas after multiple knockdowns, defeats a feared puncher in convincing fashion, accepts responsibility for business decisions that went wrong, and continues to wait for what he believes is a legitimate opportunity to settle the score with the opponent who defeated him under circumstances he considers fundamentally unfair. Whether that rematch ever happens and what conditions regulators require before allowing it to happen is still another question, but this conversation makes one thing very difficult to ignore. From the Haney camp's perspective, the story surrounding that belt is nowhere near over, and every controversy, victory, setback, and accusation discussed here appears to be setting the stage for whatever comes next.